They said you were too sensitive, too emotional, too dramatic, too fragile. They told you to toughen up, to stop overthinking, to let things go. But what they didn't understand, what they couldn't understand, is that you weren't fragile at all. You were awake. Owen Hermstring wrote, "The world confuses awareness with weakness because it fears what awareness exposes." And that's the truth. You were never too sensitive. You were just tuned into a frequency most people have spent their whole lives trying to avoid. You noticed everything. The shift in someone's tone, the silence that meant disappointment, the heaviness behind a smile. You saw the details others dismissed. You felt the tension that filled the spaces between words. You didn't just see the world, you felt it. Deeply, honestly, completely. But here's the painful paradox. In a society built on numbness, feeling deeply is rebellion. We live in a world that praises emotional disconnection. People mistake indifference for strength and silence for wisdom. The less you feel, the more stable you appear. The more you question, the more complicated you seem. So when someone like you arrives, someone who doesn't know how to pretend, someone who can't ignore the truth vibrating beneath appearances, the world labels you too much. But Hermstring reminds us, too much is what the asleep call those who are no longer hypnotized. You were never broken, you were just seeing reality without its mask. Think about it. From childhood, you were conditioned to suppress your awareness. When you cried easily, they said you were weak. When you noticed unfairness, they said you were naive. When you spoke truth that made others uncomfortable, they said you were disrespectful. The message was always the same. Don't feel so much. Don't think so much. Don't be so much. So you learned to hide your sensitivity, not because it was wrong, but because it wasn't welcome. You became skilled at pretending you didn't care, at smiling when you wanted to scream, at staying quiet when you knew the truth. You built walls, not for safety, but for survival, and yet no matter how much you tried to blend in, the sensitivity remained. It never left you because it's not a flaw, it's a function. Hermstring calls it energetic intelligence. It's the ability to read vibration before logic, to sense truth before words, to feel energy before events. You've always been an antenna for authenticity. That's why chaos exhausts you. That's why lies make your stomach turn. That's why you crave solitude more than company, because you need silence to process the world's noise. But instead of celebrating this intelligence, society pathologizes it. It calls you overthinker, empath, emotional, complicated. It diagnoses your depth as dysfunction. Why? Because awareness threatens control. Sensitive people don't follow blindly. They don't buy into illusions. They sense the manipulation before it's spoken. They see through the systems, the lies, the masks, and that makes them dangerous to the status quo. Hermstring said, "They will call your sensitivity weakness until they need your awareness to survive." And isn't that exactly what happens? People come to you when things fall apart, when they need empathy, intuition, honesty. They call you soft until your softness heals them. They call you intense until your intensity saves them. Then, when they're whole again, they retreat because your presence forces them to face what they'd rather avoid. But the problem isn't that you feel too much, it's that they feel too little. You live in a world where people pride themselves on not caring. They call it boundaries, but it's avoidance. They call it peace, but it's suppression. They think control equals strength, but Hermstring says real strength is the ability to feel without being destroyed by feeling. And that's your gift. You can face truth and still love, feel pain and still create, sense darkness and still hold light. That's not weakness, that's evolution. You were built to perceive what others ignore. That's why you notice when something's off, why you sense the lie behind a kind tone, why your intuition feels louder than reason. But when you try to explain it, people dismiss you. They need evidence, logic, data. But awareness doesn't speak that language. It speaks through energy, through vibration, through knowing. You've probably felt crazy at times, doubting your own sensitivity because others didn't validate it. But the reason they can't see what you see is simple. They're not tuned to your frequency. Hermstring explains it this way. The world you perceive depends on the vibration you maintain. You're not imagining more, you're perceiving more. So stop apologizing for your awareness. Stop shrinking to make the numb comfortable. Stop pretending you don't feel things deeply. That sensitivity is the bridge between humanity and truth. It's what keeps the world from turning completely cold. But here's the challenge. Awareness demands responsibility. The same sensitivity that lets you feel the beauty of life also makes you vulnerable to its pain. You can't turn it off, but you can train it. Hermstring said, "Sensitivity without mastery leads to suffering. Sensitivity with mastery leads to power." That's the path you're on, turning your awareness from burden to strength. And maybe that's why you were misunderstood your whole life. You weren't meant to fit in. You were meant to awaken others by existing as yourself. Every time you refused to harden, every time you kept feeling in a world that tried to numb you, you were keeping love alive. Because sensitivity is the proof that your soul is still intact. So the next time someone calls you too sensitive, look them in the eyes and smile. You're not too sensitive, you're just more alive. And in a world that fears feeling, being alive is the boldest thing you can be. You wake up already tired. You haven't done anything yet, but your body feels heavy, like you've been carrying something all night that wasn't yours. You walk into a room, and before anyone speaks, you already feel it. The tension, the anger, the sadness. You sense it all, absorb it all, and then you wonder why you're exhausted for reasons you can't explain. You tell yourself you're just too sensitive, but the truth is you're not sensitive. You're receptive. Owen Hermstring said, "Empaths aren't weak, they're antennas in a world addicted to static." And that's what you are, an antenna. You pick up on frequencies most people can't even detect, but because no one ever taught you how to handle it, you've mistaken energy for emotion and compassion for obligation. You don't just feel your own feelings, you feel everyone's. The sadness in your friend's voice, the stress in your coworker's silence, the unspoken resentment in your partner's eyes. It all sticks to you like invisible dust. By the end of the day, you're covered in other people's energy, wondering why you can't breathe. Hermstring wrote, "Most people are not tired from life. They're tired from carrying emotions that don't belong to them." And that's exactly it. You've been conditioned to think your empathy is a burden, so you try to fix, help, save, heal, because if you don't, the pain around you becomes unbearable. You've turned emotional awareness into emotional labor. You carry everyone's weight because you can't stand to see them fall, but awareness without boundaries becomes suffering. You were never meant to absorb pain. You were meant to read it. You were meant to understand energy, not internalize it. But no one told you that. They praised you for being kind, for always listening, for always being there. But they never noticed how drained you looked afterward, how much you gave up just to keep everyone else standing. Hermstring calls this the empath's wound, the belief that love means self-erasure, that to be good, you must carry what others refuse to confront. But that's not compassion, that's energetic codependency. Let's get real. You can't save people by suffering with them. You can't heal the world by letting it break you. You can't carry everyone's chaos and still call it love. Hermstring said, "You cannot raise others by lowering your frequency to meet their pain. You help no one by drowning." Here's the painful truth. Sometimes you hold on to others' pain because it distracts you from your own. It's easier to focus on fixing someone else than to face your own emptiness. It gives you purpose. It makes you feel useful, needed, important. But healing doesn't happen through martyrdom. It happens through clarity. You are not responsible for other people's healing. You are responsible for your own energy. And the moment you understand that, everything changes. You start noticing when an emotion isn't yours. You start realizing that some of the sadness you feel is just residue from the energy you've been standing in. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "Who have I been listening to energetically?" Hermstring calls this energetic discernment. It's the art of knowing what belongs to you and what doesn't. The moment you master it, your power returns. You stop being an emotional sponge and become an emotional observer. You can feel everything, but nothing sticks. Imagine that. Imagine walking into a room full of chaos and still feeling peace inside you. Imagine listening to someone's pain without carrying it home with you. Imagine saying, "I understand," instead of, "I'll fix it." That's freedom, that's mastery. But to reach that point, you'll have to break an addiction. The addiction to being the healer, the fixer, the empathic savior. Because that role feels noble, but it's still ego. It's still control disguised as love. You try to save others, not always because they can't, but because you can't stand the discomfort of watching them suffer. Hermstring wrote, "Empaths often mistake interference for compassion. True compassion allows others to learn through their own experience without you carrying their lessons for them. And yes, it will feel strange at first. You'll feel guilty for stepping back. You'll feel selfish for protecting your energy. You'll question whether you've stopped caring, but that's just the echo of your old programming. You're not becoming cold. You're becoming clear. You'll begin to see that you were never meant to carry everyone's weight. You were meant to hold your vibration steady so others could find their balance. That's real empathy, not absorbing pain, but maintaining presence. Hermstring said, "The healed empath doesn't rescue, they remind." And that's what you're becoming now. A reminder that peace is possible even in chaos, that love doesn't mean depletion, that sensitivity isn't fragility, it's precision. But be warned, as you set boundaries, people will notice. Some will call you distant. Others will say you've changed. They'll miss the version of you that absorbed their pain for them. But that's okay, because the ones meant for your energy won't need you to shrink for them. They'll rise with you. So start asking yourself, whose energy am I carrying today? If the answer isn't mine, it's time to let go. Because the world doesn't need more people who suffer silently. It needs people like you, clear, aware, grounded, who can feel everything without losing themselves. You were never too sensitive. You were just never taught how to handle the power of what you feel. And once you learn to master that power, you'll stop being overwhelmed by energy and start mastering it. Because awareness isn't a burden, it's your birthright. Look around. Everyone is scrolling, rushing, pretending. Conversations skim the surface like pebbles across water, never sinking, never touching what's real. The world doesn't want to feel. It wants to function. Owen Hermstring wrote, "Modern society doesn't heal pain. It distracts from it." And that's the truth most can't face. We live in a culture built on emotional anesthesia. People avoid silence because it confronts them. They drown stillness with noise, truth with entertainment, loneliness with screens, and meaning with money. The collective goal isn't awareness, it's avoidance. The world calls it balance, but it's not balance. It's suppression wearing a mask of control. And when someone like you shows up, awake, aware, unable to lie to yourself, you disrupt that illusion. Your very existence challenges the comfort of numbness. You feel deeply in a world terrified of depth, and that makes people uncomfortable. They tell you you're too sensitive. What they mean is, "You make me see what I've been avoiding." Hermstring said, "Depth triggers those who have built their peace on denial, and that's exactly why your energy unsettles people. You don't even have to speak. Your presence vibrates at a level that exposes pretense. They feel your awareness as confrontation because it reflects everything they've buried." The average person spends their entire life running from emotion, pain, repress it, fear, medicate it, anger, mask it with productivity, grief, replace it with distraction. We've built an entire civilization on the illusion of control, on the denial of feeling. And yet beneath the surface, everyone is starving for authenticity. They're dying to be seen, to be heard, to be understood. But to be seen requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires feeling. And that's the one thing most people can't do, feel without fleeing. So when you come along, unfiltered, sincere, incapable of pretending, they don't know how to handle it. You look at them and actually see them. You listen and actually hear. You sit in silence and actually feel, and that intimacy terrifies them. Hermstring wrote, "To a numb heart, depth feels like danger." People don't push you away because you're wrong. They push you away because you remind them what being alive feels like. Your awareness stirs emotions they've buried under decades of performance. You reawaken something they've spent their whole lives trying to kill, authenticity. That's why society praises busyness. It keeps people from having to look inward. We glorify the grind, idolize distraction, and demonize stillness. We call exhaustion success. We call emotional suppression maturity. We call blind conformity stability. But Hermstring said, the asleep call numbness peace and mistake avoidance for enlightenment. You've probably felt this. You sit among people who laugh, but you feel emptiness beneath it. You walk through crowds that look alive, but vibrate with silent anxiety. You talk to people who speak loudly but say nothing real. It's like the world is performing happiness while quietly grieving its own disconnection. And you, the one who feels everything, become the reminder of what's missing. That's why they misunderstand you. That's why your sensitivity intimidates them. They sense your emotional honesty, and it threatens the fragile structures that keep their illusions intact. But don't let that rejection turn you bitter. Hermstring warned, if the awake resent the asleep, they have fallen back into dreaming. The goal isn't to hate the numb. It's to understand why they can't feel yet. Most people weren't born numb. They became numb to survive. They learned early that feeling too much invites pain, rejection, or ridicule. They saw emotion used as weakness, so they learned to hide it. They built walls not out of pride, but out of protection. You just never learned how to shut it off, and that's your gift. You are the proof that humanity hasn't completely surrendered to the machine. That sensitivity, that awareness, that emotional intensity, it's sacred. It's what reconnects people to what's real. But to live awake in a sleeping world requires strength. You'll feel lonely at times, misunderstood often. You'll crave depth while surrounded by shallowness. You'll long for authenticity in a world that trades it for approval. But don't dim your awareness to fit their comfort. Hermstring said, if your light disturbs them, it's only because their eyes aren't open yet. So what do you do when surrounded by numbness? You stay present, you stay soft. You stay aware. You let your energy do the teaching. You speak truth without forcing it, love without expectation, and walk through the noise with inner silence. You stop trying to wake people and start embodying wakefulness, because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs resonance. It needs people who remember what real feels like, people who aren't afraid to cry, to question, to care, to listen, people like you. Hermstring said, every time a sensitive soul refuses to go numb, the collective heartbeat gets stronger. So don't apologize for feeling. Don't hide your empathy. Don't shrink your depth to survive the shallows. You were not born to blend in. You were born to remind others of what they've lost. Let the world call you too emotional. Let them call you too deep. Let them label your awareness as weakness. Because one day, when the numbness cracks, when the noise finally fades and silence becomes unbearable, they will remember you. They'll remember the one who felt. And when that happens, they'll realize you were never too sensitive. You were just still human in a world that forgot how to be. You've probably noticed this. Some people get uneasy around you for no reason. Their tone shifts. Their body language tightens. They become defensive, distant, or even irritated, and you can't figure out why. You didn't say anything cruel, you weren't trying to offend, yet somehow your very presence triggers them. Owen Hermstring called this the law of energetic reflection. He wrote, "Your energy doesn't just exist, it reveals." This law says that everything around you, people, environment, situations, reacts to your vibration. You don't need to confront or accuse anyone for truth to surface. Your frequency does it automatically. Awareness, by its nature, exposes what isn't aligned, and that's why sensitivity can feel like both a gift and a curse. You walk into a room and sense the heaviness before anyone speaks. You meet someone and instantly feel the difference between their words and their energy. You don't look for lies, you feel them. You don't want to know what people hide, yet your presence pulls it into the open. Hermstring said, "The empath's light doesn't illuminate by choice, it illuminates by existence." And that illumination can be uncomfortable, because when you radiate truth, people's illusions start to burn. They may accuse you of being judgmental, cold, or distant. But what's really happening is projection. You're not attacking them, you're reflecting them. Your energy becomes a mirror that shows people the parts of themselves they've avoided, and not everyone can handle that. The law of energetic reflection operates silently but powerfully. When you are aligned, your frequency naturally highlights misalignment. The dishonest feel exposed, the insecure feel small, the manipulative feel seen, and those who live in truth, they feel calm in your presence, because their vibration matches yours. Hermstring explained it perfectly. Your vibration determines what you reveal in others. The higher your awareness, the clearer your reflection. But here's the part most people don't realize. This reflection works both ways. When you meet someone who triggers you, it's not always because they're toxic. Sometimes it's because they're showing you an aspect of yourself you haven't healed yet. That's why Hermstring called sensitivity a double-edged mirror. It doesn't just reveal others, it reveals you. That's what makes emotional awareness uncomfortable. It forces honesty. It refuses to let you stay asleep. You can't hide behind false peace when your own reflection is asking questions you'd rather not answer. So what happens? Most people run from the mirror. They avoid those who reflect them too clearly. They call the mirror toxic. They call awareness negativity. But the truth is, it's not negativity. It's clarity. And clarity is painful only when illusion still feels like safety. Have you ever noticed how the more conscious you become, the lonelier it gets? That's the law of energetic reflection too. When your energy shifts, your environment rearranges. The people who once resonated with your old vibration naturally fall away, not because you've become arrogant, but because your frequency no longer feeds their comfort. Hermstring said, "When you rise in vibration, you stop matching with those who survive on distortion." That's why awakening feels like loss, but it's actually realignment. The mirror gets clearer, and everything false disappears. And yes, it can feel cruel, because you didn't want to lose people, you just wanted to love them truthfully. But truth and illusion cannot coexist. Once you embody awareness, your relationships either evolve or dissolve. There's no in-between. That's what makes sensitivity so powerful. It naturally organizes your life. It filters your world through resonance. You don't need to chase authenticity anymore. It starts gravitating toward you. The same light that once exposed others' shadows becomes the same light that attracts genuine souls into your orbit. But for that to happen, you must stop dimming your reflection to protect people from their own discomfort. You've probably done this. Softened your truth, laughed off what felt wrong, pretended you didn't notice the energy shift. You did it to keep the peace. But that peace was fake, and it cost you your power. Hermstring wrote, "When you hide your light to protect the blind, you join their darkness. The world doesn't need you to dim, it needs you to mirror. That doesn't mean judging others. True reflection isn't about ego, it's about vibration." It's not your job to expose anyone. It's your job to remain authentic. When you stay aligned, life does the sorting. The universe has no tolerance for inconsistency. So instead of asking, why does my sensitivity make people uncomfortable? Start asking, what is my energy revealing that words can't? You'll begin to see how every reaction you trigger in others is a reflection of frequency, not fault. You'll stop taking it personally when people withdraw, gossip, or resent you. You'll realize that their discomfort is just their own shadow meeting your light. Hermstring said, "The awakened don't argue with darkness. They reflect it until it remembers the light." That's what you do every time you choose authenticity over approval. You remind the world of what truth feels like. So don't run from your mirror. Don't dull your awareness to fit into distortion. Stand in your energy with quiet confidence. Because the people who can't handle your vibration are teaching you what you've outgrown, and the ones who can handle it are the ones you were meant to meet. The law of energetic reflection doesn't punish, it purifies. It burns away everything that's false until only alignment remains. That's why the path of awareness feels lonely. It's not emptiness, it's clarity. And as Hermstring said, when your energy becomes clean, so does your life. So let your sensitivity keep reflecting. Let it keep revealing, because the truth isn't something you have to shout, it's something you radiate, and when you walk in that kind of light, you no longer need to prove who you are. The universe already recognizes its reflection in you. There comes a point when sensitivity stops feeling like a gift and starts feeling like a prison. You care too much, think too deeply, feel too strongly, and you start wondering if awareness is worth the constant exhaustion it brings. Every emotion enters you like a storm. Every disappointment becomes a collapse. You tell yourself, I can't keep living this open. But Owen Hermstring wrote, energy is never your enemy. Only your relationship with it can destroy you. You don't suffer because you feel too much. You suffer because you never learned how to direct what you feel. Most people either drown in emotion or deny it. One extreme collapses under sensitivity, the other calcifies into numbness. Mastery lives in the middle, the place where emotion becomes information, not identity. Hermstring said, emotion is a messenger, not a master. It's there to signal alignment or disalignment, not to define who you are. When sadness appears, it's not proof you're broken. It's the body whispering, something needs release. When anger rises, it's not danger, it's a boundary trying to form. When joy floods you, it's the soul confirming resonance. But society taught you to label these natural messengers as weakness, so you fight them instead of listening. And here's the irony. What you resist emotionally grows stronger. Repression doesn't kill emotion. It buries it alive. Every unprocessed feeling becomes stored energy, vibrating beneath consciousness until something or someone triggers it again. Then you call it overreacting. But Hermstring calls it overflow. He wrote, the heart erupts not from new pain, but from old pain refelt. To master emotion, you must stop seeing it as an intruder and start treating it as language. You learn to ask, what are you showing me? Where do you come from? What are you asking to be honored? That's the shift, from reacting to relating. Emotional mastery isn't about suppression, it's about direction. Imagine your emotions as currents of water. If you dam them, they stagnate. If you unleash them recklessly, they destroy. But if you build channels, they generate power. The same rage that once made you destructive can become the energy that fuels change. The same grief that once paralyzed you can deepen your empathy. The same fear that once froze, you can sharpen your intuition. Hermstring wrote, the alchemist doesn't kill fire, they contain it until it becomes light. That's emotional mastery, alchemy. It starts with awareness, naming what you feel without judgment. Then responsibility, owning that the emotion is yours, even if someone else triggered it. Then transmutation, using breath, reflection, and intention to convert that raw energy into clarity. Think of how many times you've said, "They made me angry." No, they activated what was already vibrating inside you. The emotion is your response. The trigger is your teacher. Once you see that, no one has emotional power over you again. You become sovereign within your own frequency. Hermstring calls this energetic self-governance. He said, "The awakened don't control feelings. They guide them like wind through a flute, shaping the storm into sound." That's what mastery feels like, freedom inside the chaos. You can cry without collapsing, confront without cruelty, love without losing yourself. You stop labeling emotions as good or bad. You start seeing them as honest. You realize that sensitivity isn't about intensity, it's about accuracy. You sense truth faster than others because your emotional radar works, but mastery demands maturity. You can't keep using your feelings as weapons. You can't demand the world tiptoe around your wounds. Growth means taking responsibility for how you express what you feel. Hermstring warned, "Unhealed sensitivity becomes manipulation disguised as pain." That's the shadow you must face, the part of you that uses emotion to control instead of communicate. Real power doesn't shout, it radiates. Once you own your emotional field, people can feel the difference. You don't absorb chaos anymore, you stabilize it. You don't match others' frequency, you hold yours. That's when sensitivity turns from burden to influence. You become a calm center others instinctively trust. But getting there means practice. It means breathing through discomfort instead of reacting to it. It means letting anger finish its message before you speak. It means sitting with sadness long enough to hear what it wants to heal. It means forgiving yourself for every moment you lost control, because losing control was part of learning balance. And when you finally reach that balance, you'll understand what Hermstring meant when he wrote, "The purpose of feeling deeply is not to drown, it's to learn how to swim in consciousness." You'll stop fearing emotion because you'll see it for what it truly is, energy in motion, moving through you, not against you. And once you stop fighting what moves through you, you stop suffering. You realize the storm was never punishment. It was purification. Every breakdown was an upgrade. Every tear was recalibration. Every eruption was your energy demanding to flow freely again. And when it does, you feel something miraculous. Not numbness, not chaos, but calm vitality. You feel powerful, not because life stopped hurting, but because pain no longer owns you. That's emotional mastery. To feel everything, to hold nothing, to stay open but unbroken. Hermstring ends this lesson with one line that defines it all. When emotion obeys awareness, awareness becomes creation. That's when you stop being a victim of what you feel and start becoming a creator through what you feel. Because power was never about not feeling. It was about knowing exactly what to do with what you feel. At some point, every sensitive soul breaks. Not from cruelty, but from overgiving. You loved too openly, listened too long, cared too deeply. You gave parts of yourself to people who never noticed they were holding your light in their hands. You said yes when your body screamed no. You absorbed their storms, fixed their chaos, held their grief until you had nothing left to hold for yourself. And then you finally said it, "I can't do this anymore." Owen Hermstring called that moment the sacred collapse. He wrote, "Every empath must die once, not physically but energetically, before they learn that love without boundaries is self-destruction disguised as compassion. Boundaries are not rejection, they are clarity, they are how love matures." But society never taught you that. Society taught you that to be good, you must be selfless. That to be spiritual, you must say yes to everything. That kindness means tolerance, and tolerance means surrender. But Hermstring warned, the absence of boundaries is not love, it's leakage. And that's what most empaths become, leaking energy into every hand that reaches for it. You're not being drained because you're weak. You're being drained because you're unguarded. You've mistaken openness for availability. Let's be honest. Deep down, you didn't keep saying yes out of kindness. You did it out of fear, fear of being rejected, misunderstood, or labeled selfish. You believed your worth depended on how much you could endure. You wore exhaustion like a medal of honor. You called it loyalty, but it was addiction to being needed. Hermstring said, "When your peace depends on being someone's savior, you've mistaken control for care." And that's the hard truth. Sometimes your compassion is just disguised control. You think you're helping, but you're actually protecting yourself from guilt. You're terrified of seeing others suffer, not because of their pain, but because it awakens yours. So you overextend, overgive, overlove, until resentment begins to grow where empathy used to live. That's not love. That's spiritual burnout. Boundaries, real ones, begin when you stop seeing yourself as responsible for everyone's emotions. You realize that protecting your energy is not betrayal, it's integrity. You stop apologizing for needing space. You stop explaining your silence. You stop defending your right to peace. Hermstring wrote, "Boundaries are not walls, they are filters. They let love in but keep distortion out." And that's the key. Walls isolate, boundaries regulate. Walls come from fear, boundaries come from wisdom. You don't close your heart, you refine its entry. You stop allowing people who confuse your compassion for compliance. You stop explaining your energy to those committed to misunderstanding it. You stop proving your intentions to those who profit from your guilt. Because the truth is, not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone has earned your vulnerability. Not everyone should be allowed to speak directly to your nervous system. When you start setting boundaries, people will react. Some will call you cold, others will call you arrogant. They'll miss the version of you that tolerated their chaos, the version that didn't know how to say no. But don't confuse their discomfort with your wrongdoing. Hermstring said, "Your evolution will offend those who benefited from your self-abandonment. So let them call you selfish. Let them say you've changed. Because yes, you have changed. You've stopped bleeding for validation. You've stopped mistaking endurance for strength. You've stopped sacrificing your peace to prove your worth. Now you protect your energy, not out of fear, but out of reverence. Because you finally understand that your light isn't infinite, it's sacred. And here's the paradox. Once you protect your energy, your heart actually opens more. Why? Because safety creates capacity. When you stop letting the world drain you, you start having energy to love intentionally. Your presence deepens. Your intuition sharpens. You love from overflow, not emptiness. You give because you want to, not because you're afraid not to. Hermstring wrote, "The healed empath doesn't build walls, and they build gates. Gates can open and close. Gates choose. Gates discern. That's mastery. You no longer live in defense, you live in direction. You decide who gets access to your vibration. You decide when to speak, when to stay silent, when to give, when to rest. You finally become the guardian of your own energy field. And as you do, something magical happens. Peace stops being something you chase. It becomes something you radiate. You walk into a room and your calm changes the atmosphere. You no longer react to chaos, you neutralize it. You don't mirror people's energy anymore, you set the tone. That's what Hermstring meant when he said, "True protection is not resistance, it's resonance." And you're not hiding from the world anymore, you're choosing how to meet it. So let this be your reminder. You are not obligated to be available to everyone. You are not responsible for others' comfort. You are not cruel for walking away from energy that drains you. You are protecting what the universe placed in you, awareness. And awareness without boundaries collapses under its own weight. Hermstring ends this teaching with one of his most powerful truths. The awakened don't close their hearts to survive the world. They open them wisely to transform it. That's the balance you've been searching for. The one where love no longer destroys you and peace no longer isolates you. Because boundaries were never about keeping people out. They were always about letting yourself stay in. There comes a moment when you stop apologizing for your depth. When you realize you never asked to be this aware, you simply are. You didn't choose to feel the energy behind every word, the ache in people's eyes, the vibration in a room, but you can choose what to do with it, and that choice changes everything. Owen Hermstring wrote, "The gift of awakening is not sight itself, but what you dare to do once you see." For most of your life, awareness felt like punishment. You felt misunderstood, drained, even alien. But what if that very sensitivity, the one that isolated you, was your initiation? The universe doesn't give that kind of perception to everyone. It entrusts it to those strong enough to bear truth without turning it into arrogance. The awakened walk a strange road. You feel joy deeper, pain sharper, love wider. You can no longer lie to yourself. You sense what others refuse to acknowledge. The tension beneath a smile, the falseness in, "I'm fine." And sometimes you wish you could unsee it all. But Hermstring said, once the veil lifts, blindness becomes impossible. So you learn to live differently. Not louder, but truer. You stop craving validation from the numb. You stop explaining your energy to those who still worship illusion. You stop seeking comfort in places that demand your smallness. Awareness begins to reshape you from the inside. Your choices, your relationships, your silence. You start loving in a way that doesn't drain you. You start speaking in a way that doesn't wound you. You start existing in a way that feels like peace, even when the world is on fire. But this kind of peace isn't soft. It's forged. It's the calm that comes after burning away every false identity you used to wear just to be accepted. Hermstring said, "The awakened aren't here to fit in. They're here to frequency shift. That means your presence itself is purpose." You don't have to be famous, spiritual, or saintly. Every moment you choose honesty over performance, you raise the collective vibration. Every time you feel deeply without drowning, you make consciousness safer for others to explore. Still, being awake can feel lonely. You walk through crowds and feel the collective exhaustion. You watch people chasing distractions that will never feed them. You sense a kind of emotional homelessness in humanity, everyone searching for connection while terrified of vulnerability. And there you are, seeing it, feeling it, aching for it to change. Hermstring warned, the danger of awareness is despair. The discipline of awareness is compassion. So you practice compassion like a warrior trains, fiercely and daily. You forgive not because it's easy, but because hate feels heavier once you can feel everything. You choose empathy even when it hurts, because closing your heart would mean betraying the very gift that makes you different. You realize that awakening was never about escaping pain. It was about learning to carry love through it. To be the one who stays kind in a cruel world, to be the one who listens when everyone else shouts, to be the one who feels fully, unapologetically, relentlessly. The world will call you naive. It will tell you that caring too much is dangerous. But Hermstring countered, indifference is not wisdom. It's emotional poverty. Feeling deeply in a shallow age is rebellion. It's activism of the soul. Every time you choose presence over distraction, connection over cynicism, truth over convenience, you're healing something ancient in this world. And then comes the realization that breaks you open once more. You were never here to fix people. You were here to remind them. Your empathy, your awareness, your emotional honesty, these are not flaws. They're signals sent to awaken others from the dream of detachment. You become living proof that sensitivity is not fragility, it's frequency. Hermstring wrote, "The enlightened don't preach, they pulse." That's what you do now. You walk through life radiating what you've learned in silence, that real power is gentle and real awakening is humble. And in that gentleness, you finally meet yourself. Not the rescuer, not the outsider, not the misunderstood soul, but the mirror of consciousness itself. You realize that being awake doesn't separate you from humanity. It connects you to it in ways words can't describe. You start seeing beauty again, raw, unfiltered beauty. The way sunlight hits tired faces on a bus, the way a child laughs without resistance, the way rain cleans the city like forgiveness made visible. Awareness turns ordinary life into sacred ritual. You stop searching for meaning because you are meaning in motion. This is the gift of being awake. You don't escape the world, you inhabit it fully. You don't transcend humanity, you redeem it through presence. You don't seek perfection, you embody truth. Hermstring ends this teaching with a reminder that feels like a prophecy. When the awake stop hiding, the world remembers how to feel. So live proudly as the one who feels. Feel without fear, love without armor, speak without pretense. Let your heart stay unguarded but guided. Let your presence remind others that sensitivity is not the opposite of strength. It is strength refined, because the world doesn't need more minds pretending to be wise. It needs hearts brave enough to stay alive. And that's you, the awakened, the aware, the one who still feels. If these words reached you, it's not coincidence, it's resonance. You are part of the rare ones, the ones who still feel, who still see, who still care when it would be easier not to. You were never too sensitive. You were chosen to be aware in a world that forgot what awareness feels like. So don't shrink, don't apologize, don't numb yourself to fit a frequency that was never meant for you. Let your presence remind the asleep what being human truly means. Tell me in the comments, what truth in this message hit you the hardest? What part of your sensitivity are you reclaiming today? If you're ready to keep walking this path, this awakening through awareness, this healing through honesty, subscribe, stay close and keep your light unhidden, because this isn't just a channel, it's a sanctuary for the ones who still feel, and the world may call you too sensitive. But we know better. You were never weak.